So good to be here. As a little kid growing up in Jaipur, I had a dream. I wanted to fly. A kite, actually. How many of you have ever flown a kite in your life? If you've flown a kite, you probably know this, that the toughest thing about flying a kite is getting started. Once a kite is up in the air, anybody can fly a kite. But getting started is really the tough bit. And I think in many senses, that's true for many of the things we might do in our lives. Getting started is really the tough bit. I also figured, that if you don't know how to fly a kite, all you need to do is to ask for help. If there's someone who's willing to kind of hold the kite up for you and hoist it, suddenly flying a kite can become very, very easy. But you know what? Many of us go through our lives too scared to ask for help. We're too proud of ourselves to be able to admit that, you know what, I can't do this myself. So we don't ask for help. And because we don't ask for help, we try and fly a kite, and if it doesn't work, we rationalize. We say, the sun doesn't suit my skin. I'd rather play marbles. And we then go through our lives without discovering the joy of actually being able to fly a kite. But you know what? As a 6-year-old growing up in Jaipur, I found solace in the fact that I knew someone else who was older and he didn't know how to fly a kite. My elder sister. But good girl that she was, she came up and helped me, and she held the kite and hoisted it for me, and I discovered the joy of being able to fly a kite. So here we were, two people, neither of whom knew how to fly a kite. But together, we actually managed to make the magic happen. And just when I thought I was the happiest man in town, I discovered that my sister was even more excited as she went around telling the whole world how she helped that little fellow learn how to fly a kite. As I look back now, I often think there are lots of little lessons that we might all learn from things that happen around us. Life lessons, leadership lessons, things that can actually tell us a thing or two, which perhaps no classroom would ever be able to tell us. But of course, as a kid who was growing up learning to fly kites, I then grew up, and like a lot of young people who don't know what they want to do with their lives, I too ended up in business school. And I went to one of those lesser-known institutes of management in Western India, and I was excited when my first job took me to one of India's largest household and personal care companies. It was seen as the place to go if you wanted to make a career in sales and marketing. Honest confession, I was excited. I was looking forward to my first day at work because I thought, waiting for me on my first day at work would be, someone like this. So you can imagine that sense of anticipation. And then the huge disappointment when on my first day, they sent me off here. And I learned a few hard truths. First, I learned that things seldom happen the way you want them to. Learn to expect the unexpected. But perhaps there's a bigger lesson I learned, which was really this, that businesses aren't built inside conference rooms. Businesses aren't built inside air-conditioned offices. They're built out there, in the marketplace, where consumers part with hard-earned cash to buy a company's products and services. And that's a lesson that's kind of stayed with me. And like a lot of people, I was excited by this whole idea of countries where people had to do mandatory service in the army. And I said, there's so much you can learn from the army, from warfare. So when I got an opportunity to join the war, I did. Except in this case, it was the Polar War. And I ended up working, it was the blues versus the reds. And again, I learned something which business school didn't teach you. Business school taught us that, successful brands, successful businesses are built around those 4 P's: product, price, place, promotion. And then I learned that there were 2 other P's, which could be even more powerful: people and passion. And I suddenly discovered how, with a passionate bunch of people, magic can begin to happen. And I was hugely excited by an opportunity to say, how do you get a group of people to get excited by a cause? And how do you get a group of people to start believing that there's something that they need to achieve in their lives? Of course, I must confess, along the way, I also got into the habit of reading, and I used to love reading these large 300 pages of some really interesting stuff. And at the end of it, I try and pull out that one little story, that one paragraph, which seemed to capture the essence of it all. And I said, wow, authors have this remarkable ability to make all of us into gold diggers, right? You've got to go through so much to be able to pull out that little nugget. I don't know if you've read, C.K. Prahlad, and his fabulous book on the fortune at the bottom of the pyramid. It's a book I really love, and I said this impressed me so much that I actually decided to go and work right there at the bottom. I went and sold diapers. Trust me, there is no other business which has as many bottoms in it as the diaper business. But you know what? Through it all, I actually learned that I was a lucky guy. I was lucky that I got to work with a lot of people who taught me some fabulous lessons. I was lucky that I was a part of a team where I learned a lot by just looking at people, by learning from their experiences. And I said, you know what, maybe there's an opportunity for me to try and share some of those lessons. I also figured, and now you can see I'm a quick learner, because after just 30 years at work, I figured that what excited me really was not this opportunity of saying I built the brand, or we gained market share, or we built shareholder wealth. What really excited me was the chance to touch other people. A chance to be able to say that there is someone who might have worked with me and who might actually go back and say, you know what, this man made a difference to my life. And just that little thought that I could make a difference to someone else's life just became the high for me in my life. Okay? And there's something else I discovered along the way, which was really the magic of storytelling. I discovered that as I was speaking to people, speaking to my team, listening in, you could tell a bunch of people, come on guys, you should not give up, let's persevere, let's stay the course. And they look at you and say, yeah, haven't I heard this before? You tell them a story, and suddenly magic happens. You tell them a story, and the story sticks in people's heads. A story becomes a convenient hook for them to hang on to a fact, for them to then say, this makes sense. And because the story is not about them, it allows people to not get defensive about where they are. It allows them to look and say, yeah, if it worked for him, maybe it will work for me. And thus was born this whole idea of saying, how can I use stories to influence change? How can I use stories to get people to start thinking just a bit differently? Of course, along the way also came the idea of saying, maybe this is a chance to now say, how can I make another dream come true? And that really was a dream to write a book. So I say, hey, here's this idea. How can I put together stories that can change people's lives? I put out 4 book proposals, and I send them out to 4 publishers, 2 Indian publishers. Easily, hopefully, they'll say yes. And 2 of these big name multinational publishers. No harm dreaming big. Guess what? I sent the proposals out, and within a week, I got a response from an Indian publisher saying, thank you very much, not interested. But of course, by now you know me, I'm not the kind of guy who would give up in a hurry. So I persevered, and 2 weeks later, I got a response from the other Indian publisher who said, sorry, regret, can't use. Several months later, after the snow had melted, a penguin emerged from somewhere and said, yeah, we'd like to do your book. And thus was born a book. And, after that came another one. And then suddenly I discovered I had a chance to try and talk to people. I had a chance to reach people. I had a chance to try and, do the things that I actually enjoyed doing. And the penny for me dropped really on 2 occasions. First, there was a girl who wrote to me after reading a book and said, I'm sitting here in engineering college in our lab, and I've been cursing my parents for everything I've been through. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with my life, but I just read something which I think has kind of made it clear to me. And I said, wow, I don't know her, but if I can make that difference to one person in this world, I'd say, hey, not a bad job done. And then another day, I was speaking to a group of people, and after I finished, a chap got up and spoke in a mixture of Marathi and English, and he said, you know what, I wish I'd heard you speak 20 years earlier, because then I wouldn't be sitting in the audience, I'd be on stage along with those other dignitaries. and I said to myself, maybe this is what I need to do for the rest of my life. And I suddenly discovered a calling, and I said, this is really what I want to do, help other people unleash the leader inside themselves. So I quit work, and I said, let me spend the rest of my life doing stuff I really enjoy. Let me start doing things that really turn me on and get me excited. And I now, I say I go to work, but actually go and have a lot of fun speaking and writing and actually helping other people unleash the leader within them. And in that spirit, what I want to do is to say that I've got a lot of people sitting in this room, all young leaders. And what can I do to try and help you perhaps to unleash the leader inside yourself? And that's what I'm going to try and do quickly. But first, how did this idea of the leader within actually come up? And I think it's interesting. There's a lovely story of the statue of David. This is in Florence, in Italy. It's 20 foot tall and it's made from one single piece of marble. The story goes that several great sculptors were invited to do something with that marble. And they all looked at it and said, nah, this is a flawed piece of marble. There's something wrong with it. Can't do much. And then Michelangelo, young Michelangelo came along and said, let me try and do something with it. Takes it to his workshop, starts work on that 20-foot piece of marble. A little girl walks up to him one night and says, she's there banging away at the marble. She says, why are you hitting it so hard? And he says, young lady, there's an angel inside the rock. I'm just trying to help set it free. And I think that's true for all of us. I think there's a leader inside each of us. There's a leader waiting to be set free. Most of you will relate to this. At some stage in your life, you've been dismissed as flawed, worthless, nothing good's going to come of you. And then a kind sculptor comes along and makes the magic happen. And what I want to do for you is to make that magic happen today. So what I've got with me is a little tool, a little device that can perhaps give us some useful lessons in what it takes to be a great leader. And what I have with me, ladies and gentlemen, is a tea bag. And I want you to know that you don't have to go to business school to learn leadership. You can learn leadership even from a thing as humble as a little tea bag. Here then are some lessons that I want you to kind of think of to say, hey, maybe I can learn leadership even from a tea bag. Lesson number one is this. Sorry. Leaders are like tea bags. It's only when you put them in hot water that you know how strong they really are. In good times, everybody can look like a good leader, but it's when you are under pressure, when you've got the hammer on you, it's that moment when your true leadership actually emerges. And you know what? Great leaders are like good tea bags. They love the opportunity of a challenge. They love to get into hot water to see, hey, let me show the world how good I really am. Lesson number two. A lot of these tea bags have nice looking string, sometimes silk. They have very fancy printed labels, but none of that makes a difference to the quality of the tea bag. What matters is what's inside the tea bag. So become the kind of leader who's not worried about getting labels or acquiring a fancier looking string. Worry about what's inside. What are those values? What's the core that defines you as a human being? And that's what will make you a terrific leader. Lesson number three. You know what? The tea bag can be anywhere in that cup and it'll work just as well. There is no rule which says it has to be right on top for it to work. And yet many young leaders think, when I become a leader, I do this. Or when I get to the top, I'll do this. Don't wait. You can make a difference right where you are, right with what you're doing right now. You can make a difference. Grab that opportunity. And the next lesson, you know what? You can have the finest tea inside the bag, but if the bag is not porous, it won't work. You've got to make sure that you allow the rest of the world to get in touch with you. You've got to make sure that you reach out, communicate, touch other people. It's only then that that tea inside the bag can go and turn that hot water into a terrific cup of tea. So learn to be porous, learn to be open, learn to touch, learn to reach out. And the next one, it often happens that the bowl is so large that one tea bag is not enough. Great leaders are not just people who work well with followers. Great leaders learn to work with other leaders. Learn to work with other leaders. Recognize that you may not be able to solve a problem on your own and that you actually need help to get it done. So become the kind of leader who's good at working with other leaders, not just with followers. And of course, sometimes you need to add milk and sugar. And if someone wants a cup of tea which has got milk and sugar, even the world's best tea bag cannot do it. You still need someone to bring in the milk and the sugar. So become the kind of leader who attracts complementary skills, who recognizes his limitations and says, I may not have all the answers, but let me surround myself with people who can help me find the right answers. So become that kind of leader. And of course, good lesson to remember. Never mind how good you are, someone else holds the string at all times. It's good to know that you're answerable. It could be to a shareholder, to an employee, to a customer, to God, to someone, but you've got to believe you're answerable. And that it's not something that you can actually do everything on your own. And of course, I love this bit that, you know what? No one ever drank a cup of tea and then said, wow, that was a fantastic tea bag. They would say this was great tea. So remember, leadership is not about me, it's about them. It's not about going down in history as a great leader, but about being recognized for having created a fantastic team, for having left an impact on an organization. And of course, eventually, tea bags need to make way and get out. Many leaders tend to think that, you know what, if I leave this place will come tumbling down. I make it happen. Bad idea. You've got to learn to just move out and allow the person to enjoy the tea. And you've got to remember, it's when you leave the place that people will truly discover how good an impact you've made on society. I hope some of these lessons kind of resonate, and I hope as young people you will grab the opportunity to actually go out and say, you know what, I can make a difference. This little tea bag can get into hot water and then turn that water into tea. You have the power, I think, to make a difference. Don't waste the power. I think there's magic in making a difference. Discover the magic. And today, a little boy who's scared of flying kites today tells stories, and from a peddler of soap to a peddler of hope, it's been fun. It's been a fun journey. And when people ask me, what did it take to make that move from a corporate life into doing stuff I enjoy, to chasing my passion? And you know what I say? I used to think that there would be a day that I'd be sitting in the winter of my life on an easy chair, looking back, and there could be, one of two things I could have been saying. I could have been saying, I wish I had, or I could have been saying, I'm glad I did. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm glad I did. Thank you very much.